Rollins and I had lunch, and I left on, I'm going to miss him terribly. And during that, we talked about we are our stories, how we think of ourselves, how we tell the stories of our lives is who we are. And sometimes that is not always the whole story, or even the only way to look at it. And I brought some pictures with me of my life. And I did that because I've done this. Talking to someone and asking them about how they grew up, where they were, what they did, is one thing, and they tell you a little bit of the story, but if you ask them to bring photographs, it evokes so much. It evokes emotions. It evokes laughter and smile, yes, and tears. And it is a remarkable experience. And Don said, yeah, I have nothing to do on Memorial Day weekend. Would you be willing to do this? And I said, you bet I would. I'm a little nervous about it because I don't know how many of you care about my life. So, but we'll find out. And the idea is to see how this works and to do it. It is easier, a little bit easier than sleeping at someone's house. I have done this with people in here, some of which took 2 hours, some of which took 3 hours, some of which took one heck of a lot longer than just 3 hours. And they have been magic, magic hours of connection. How you tell your story is how you see yourself. And if I have time, I may make you stay a little bit to hear some of that. So, we haven't figured out a system. There's a way to do this with a PC, right? Where you press buttons and I can't do that many things at the same time. There's two other things, one of which is Mark Dre looked at the notes I had. He said, yeah, you too, you're bouncing up the fonts as we get older. Yeah, yeah, we are. And the second thing is that I'm under medical treatment, and part of that medical treatment gives me, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, so I'm not going to try. I wear my heart on my sleeve. If something gets close to my heart, I will begin to choke up. I may even start crying. So you need to just indulge me, if you will. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. It's just how it is for me now. So there they are. That was our signal, right? I'm going to cough the whole time. This is my grandmother and grandfather. They grew up in Queens Village, New York. My mother was born in Coney Island, New York, Brooklyn. Hal's there. He's right there with me. She was a grandmother. She was just this loving, just swaddle you in her hugs. And grandfather's a little more remote. I really don't remember much about grandfather. He was a tool and die maker, and he used to provide out in the backyard a place for us to dig and bury cans and things with toys in them. For the next time we came, we could dig them up again. This is my mom and dad. I don't know the occasion, actually. Yep. And he was mom was a remarkable gal. And dad was dad quit high school in 8th grade because it was the Depression. He had to go out and work to support the family. He worked as a machinist, was a union guy, became the shop steward. And when the war came, he did not go. All of his brothers went, but he was asked to stay back, and he taught the replacement for the men machinists, and they were women at the time. Rosie the Riveter is not just a poster. And so he taught them how to run the munitions factories, how to make the parts for tanks, the airplanes. That was his service. When it was over, they needed shop teachers. With an 8th grade education, he couldn't do that, so he went to night school to get an equivalency degree. The wonderful story about that is that he went to the English class, he went to the English teacher, and he said, I am not good at this. I'll tell you what, if I come in early and make coffee for us, so the teacher said, you come in and do that, you will pass this course. And so that's how he got through English. And then he taught shop in New York City for many, many years. he adorable? Now this is sort of important. This is sort of an important thing. That's Davy Crockett with his tool belt. And that is a toy gun, I'm going to show you. This is me with my Bible. We were I was brought up a Lutheran, and Mom and Dad started the church that I was brought up in. It was the largest Lutheran church in Queens Village, New York, which is saying something. And I love my two-tone jacket. I miss that. And this is my dad as part of that. Now, Mom and Dad were always part of the church. That was, much like it is here for many of us, right? This is our community. This is where we find fellowship. This is where we find love and companionship. And this is where you raise your kids, like that one. That was my dad at a Boy Scout retreat, and he was doing a Sunday service in the morning.
No.
That was back when you could be good Christians. You're going, wait, am I coughing? This is me in a physics class. It was taken for the yearbook. I was good at math, good at science. That was my strength. Now, the next one. This is my spirit animal. He was already with me by that time. That is the black dog of depression. And in high school, I suffered a fair amount. It would come and go in waves. It has all my life. And when he was with me, it was awful. And then he'd go away. He'd wait on the other side of the universe until I showed some weakness, and he would come back. So someone not too long ago asked me, what was my spirit animal? That's him. He's still here. This is my brother, Philip. And I included this fuzzy picture because that was my basement. That's my dad's tool shop. I grew up with that. I grew up with a lathe, a drill press, a grinder, a bandsaw. You can see the lathe maybe to the left-hand side of the picture, and all the tools up on racks neat. He was a machinist, so everything was neat and clean until my brother and I got done with it. He'll come back later too. This is senior in high school. I am preparing to go on a trip to Europe, which was fascinating. It was wonderful. It was a student group. And the students got to be on this trip because they were so smart, and they would have debates, and the very best debaters from each school would get to go on this trip. I got to go because we live near the airport. So as exchange students came in earlier that year, we would host them until their families could pick them up. That made me a participant. I would have never gone. The quality of these kids was amazing. It was 7 weeks, all through Europe, Norway, Germany, and we would have lectures. In Norway, it was by the shipping industry, and they hosted us. They put on a fabulous lunch, and they talked about shipping and the economics of of Scandinavia and how important shipping was. And the students who went with me would go to the library before we met with people to study up on what the talk was going to be about. It was such a privilege to be with them. And that turned out to be a very good friend on the trip who went on to Harvard, of course. And he's out in Michigan now, I think, Craig. And we're doing, part of the get to know each other was to do a improv. And so that's the two of us improving being on an airplane. So this is like one of my very favorite things in the whole world. This was my Volvo P1800, and I can't tell my life story without this car. And that car, I worked on it, I changed the engine, we put in a different rear end from another one that was better. We put in air conditioning finally. I drove that car in and out of New York City. I went to school at Cooper Union in New York City for engineering. And Drove that car to Florida to go down to Mexico. I love that car. So, the next picture, that is me in Acapulco. That car drove us down to Florida, and then we got on a plane. And I'm there with one of my very best friends who's up at MIT, or was at MIT. And we are having dinner with our host parents. This picture's up there. I was at Cooper Union at this time, and the black dog did not leave me alone, and I had to quit. It's a regret. In fact, I have never completed college. I do not have a college degree, and that's been a regret. But Union Carbide took a chance on me, so I became an engineer for Union Carbide. It looks like most people in this room are old enough to remember Union Carbide. And it made liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid argon. And it was very sophisticated stuff because it was all like minus 300 degrees, it was cold. And so this is what I did with them. This is a diagram of the boiler of a cryogenic condenser, which is how you make oxygen nitrogen. You get air, you make it a liquid, and then you distill it just like you do whiskey. And they're huge towers, and they're insulated. And because I was a mechanic, I got to go to plants whenever there was a problem, and I got to meet some wonderful people. And we worked 20 hours, 24-hour shifts to get those plants back online. And I loved it, and I was good at it. And I was working with my hands. So I moved around long enough that they needed a trucking manager at that plant that I finally wound up at as plant engineer, and then did a lot of chemical engineering there. And they needed a trucking manager, and it was in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. The drivers were the Teamsters out of Newark. They were Tony Provenzano's drivers. And we had several people come to the plant, and one of them I remember came from Oregon, I think, or Idaho. Maybe I'm conflating with Scott. But he came in my office and closed the door, and he said, you know, I have this plant, and at lunch, I go out with a couple of the guys and we go fishing across the street, you know, for our 45-minute lunch. Why would I want to do this? And there was no good answer. So finally, down the list they went. I was the youngest trucking manager at least in the Eastern Seaboard at that time, and they asked me to do that. I enjoyed that job immensely. And this is how the black dog actually came enough to almost put me in the hospital. I went home from work one day and could not go back. And there was a friend of mine, an acquaintance from the apartment building who was also home that day. He worked at the hospital in transcription. And he said, you need to see somebody. And I said, I really do. And I saw my first psychiatrist. And he gave me, that's an interesting story. I think it's interesting, maybe you won't. He gave me a couple blue pills. Etrifon was the name of it. One is a tranquilizer, the other was a mood elevator. And so I took them, and I took more that night, and I took more in the morning because I was young and immortal. But I remember opening the door to go outside, and the sky was blue, and the grass was green, and the air smelled so fresh. I had never experienced that before. And it made me realize some part of my problem was organic, that other people live that way, and they see that, and I don't, and many people don't. I know a lot of people in this room don't either. And then I got real lucky, seriously lucky. I met that wonderful woman sitting there with my wonderful daughter, and we got married. We got married up in Connecticut. I bought those glasses, no, I didn't, special for the wedding. No, I did not. But that started a whole new life, and I think in many ways with the black dog, I might be alive today because of that wonderful woman. And then, another baby picture, right? Aww. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this is Dana, and this changed our lives, as you might imagine. We were living in New Jersey, and shortly thereafter we headed off. I was still an engineer at Union Carbide. Molly was working at maybe American Cyanamid, at the time. And we came here to Pennsylvania. I wanted to get out of New York. New York is a great place to be young. New York is a great place to be rich. But to get caught there, middle-aged and middle income, tough. So we bought this house. I wanted a 2-bedroom ranch. And the realtor said, I just want to show you this house, because I have to see it myself. And so we went in, and Molly said, I want this house. And I said, oh. But I said I had one more house in me, because we had rebuilt our last house. I said I have one more house in me, but this will have to be it. And that house has brought us so much joy. We were only gifted with one child. And, but we had more kids than you could shake a stick at in that house. We come home and find kids sprawled all over the living room and dining room. Kids would get in the sleeping bag and go romping down the stairways. Parties. Kind of aside that one of the dear friends of Dana's and ours, actually a little girl by the name of Shannon. And we're talking birthday parties, right, where everybody comes in costumes in that house. Well, Shannon's wedding party was, I'm going to start crying. Shannon's wedding party was there yesterday to have pictures taken at the porch. And the wheel turns. Yeah. I'm sorry, you know, I get to pick. This is my daughter again. She's been such a joy, such a joy. I've learned so much of her. I think one of the, this is how the stories go, right? One of the big things she taught me is when I would ask her, no, or tell her, no, you can't do that, and she'd go, why? I don't know. It's just always been the easiest thing to say. And so that process of examining your own thoughts, just a gift. I'm still at Union Carbide. Wow. I'm still at Union Carbide here. I am out of trucking. I am now at a corporate center. And I am a senior engineer, and I am doing logistics studies with a pen and graph paper. You may notice that there is an old push-button phone, there is no computer, there is no laptop. Some of you may remember that shortly. I went on from there. Huh? Where's the slide rule? Isn't that right? No, I did have, I think it's on the left there is a punch calculator. So, no more slide rule. I left Union Carbide. They were changing in ways I don't like. And the higher up I got in the corporation, the more misogynistic it got, the more capitalist cutthroat it got, the nastier it was. And there was, we lost that camaraderie in the plants. You know, we would, you know, somebody needed to go home, you took a shift, her shift, you never thought about it. All of a sudden it's not quite that way. And there were some things that were just said and nasty. And so I did quit. They had a please quit program, and I did. So, and now I am a management consultant. I'm flying around the country, helping people with problems, both chemical plants, trucking, insurance, data mining, all that kind of thing. And here we are in Disney World. That was a very, very happy time in my life. Although the black dog is still hanging around. Next slide. My brother is back in this picture because when I was maybe 45, I think, he died of alcohol. And I drank a ton. I started drinking when I was 15, and I drank very, very heavily all the time. Not until evening. I learned not to do lunches early on. And he followed in my footsteps in a lot of ways. I could see his drinking was very similar to my drinking. And then he couldn't stop. And it killed him. And that's a very serious regret. That'd be the third one. big regret in my life. Dana said one time, can we go to a real church like all my friends? You know, because it's now school time, she's growing up. Can we go to a real church? And I said, yes, I've heard about Unitarians. They don't necessarily believe in a God or gods, but I understand they sacrifice things. I think I could probably count this as one of the second largest blessings, or third, I guess, if you want to, my wife, Dana, and this community. And this community, that's Corbin, Abby, Chris Vaughn, and Corbin, dear, dear friends. Corbin's been a friend since his birth. This is before Everett showed up. This is another set of friends. Kids, right? Kids, loving kids, beautiful. That to the left there with the beer bottle, and that one, that's Ethan. I just don't want to leave him out. But there we are with the Beanie Babies. Next slide. This is Hayden. Yes, Hayden Herschel. So many gifts from this church. I was asked, maybe by Greta Porter, whom you never said no to. They had this was a Halloween, if I recall, and she said, we need someone to man a table upstairs. So there we are picking out the organs for our Frankenstein. It was a glass of water with plastic organs in it. What a joy to do that stuff. Oh my gosh. Next slide. And dear, dear friends, John, Connie Ritzer, Julie, Mark, and Barb Dre, dinner. Community, sharing.
She's here.
Now I'm going to start crying. This is the most wonderful partner I ever had. She was my partner in buildings and grounds for a couple of years. Talented, kind, loving. We redid the bathrooms, and when I say we, that's sort of hilarious. Because just as we started to do the bathrooms, a toilet tank shattered, and I wound up cutting a tendon in my right hand. And so I could not help at all. And Diana just said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And she, and Tazzy is here, and Marsha Albright, is she here? Yeah.
The 70-year-olds.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Those strong women, Unitarian women, by God, did those bathrooms. The cast came off the day they were finished. And one more slide, because these are my slides, and I get to pick. That's my partner, Diana.
Yay.
Isn't that right? Yeah. Next slide. And that's me. God, one of the other wonderful things about this community is to be able to get up and be here and to look out on so many friends and to see the smiles and the warmth and feel the love. And I don't know what I'm doing there. But I'm up here, and I'm being a lamb here. And that is such a gift. If you get the chance to do this, really consider it's a gift, right? Yeah. Do I hear an amen? Next slide. So one of the gifts I got for my birthday was blacksmithing school, right? And for a guy who, his hands, right? So for a weekend, Molly got it for me for my birthday. It was a weekend at the Mountain Arts Center. And that's my blacksmith teacher, and that's my blacksmithing hat. It was October, it was freezing cold at the camp. It was the last weekend they were open. And we with the forges were the only people warm in the entire camp. And down there is actually, I was a member of the Pittsburgh Artist Blacksmiths Association here in Pittsburgh for a couple, 4 years. God, that was fun.
Pete,
Hmm?
here I am
Over here, Greg.
Yeah.
last slide. If you put that last slide on, I've immortalized that anvil. I use it as a chalice on my name tag.
Okay. Good. That chalice. Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. You asked if it was buildings and grounds?
So what?
Was it for buildings and grounds? Was that why we did that?
No, I wanted a picture of a chalice, and I said that anvil looks like it could be a good chalice.
Uh-huh.
That's right. We copied that. That's right. Thank you. Thank you for remembering that. That's why. Pictures, right? There's only about 181. So, this is actually a really, really good news body scan. Those dark spots up in my shoulder are bursitis. I couldn't be happier. Because this is the beginning of when the cancer was discovered, my prostate cancer. This is all good news. This is all positive. Really, everything about this talk, everything about my life, I am the freaking luckiest guy on the planet. I have some issues. Who doesn't? So, this was an MRI scan a bone scan to just make sure that nothing had spread somewhere that it shouldn't have. Well, it spread where it shouldn't have. But it hadn't clumped yet. And I'll be going back in for one of these pretty soon. I always wanted to have a picture of me on the internet with no clothes. I knew that was coming. So there it is. I had the opportunity to do weddings, actually 2 weddings. So a member of the congregation had 2 daughters, and the 2 daughters, jokingly, I thought, said early on that they wanted me to marry them. And my first thought was, whoa, that's a little late. But what they meant was that they would like me to perform the ceremony. And this was the first of the sisters, and this is the rehearsal. And what a privilege that is, really. To be there intimately when you're, reading them the vows and they're exchanging that vow, and you are part of that. The 2 of them and you. And that's the other one. That's Meredith. And that was down in North Carolina. Joyous affairs, joyous affairs. Thank you. And right, this is because of this church. I learned to be able to do this. I learned the confidence. I learned the spirituality to be able to do that here with you. That's my beloved Sadie, or was. I've never had a pet like that. She was bonded to me. She was loyal to me. She was my beloved. And she got hit by a car and killed. Heavy rain has been detected. And that was tough, right? That was tough. And it took a little while to sort of sort that out. And I'll talk about that briefly because this is going on way too long. Kuan Yin. This is a Buddhist influence I've come to in the last 3 years. Kuan Yin is the goddess of compassion. And I learned a couple very important things through her, one of which is compassion includes self-compassion. Be good to yourselves. Allow yourself mistakes. Be compassionate to yourself, especially when things are going nuts. The other thing is compassion itself. And one of the messages that I got strongly out of compassion is to listen. When you have a friend that's talking, just listen. Be a vessel. Just let them talk. I wasn't very good at that before. That's a form of compassion. This is Wicca. I have had some wonderful, wonderful gifts from Wicca. This is the altar in my bedroom. Wicca is I had 2 people who taught me about Wicca, one of whom is here. And what a gift. It's a religion filled with intention, so you have ways to express yourself that I'm not sure we do, or I didn't feel I had before. This is a service. My friend's father has completed his life. And at that moment, they are conducting a service in another city. And I had a place to put down that photograph and sit on the floor and to be with them as they performed that ritual. It was lovely. So this is my cancer. I can't tell you my life story without this. So you can see the PSA level, which is a measure, right? Prostate-specific androgen. We're all old people, almost all old. So we all know about this. And so you can see 2006, and I had my testosterone drop down to 0, which is the weepy part. And then for 2 years, it went up. 4 years, it looks like, wow. And then we did away with the testosterone again, and then up, and then back down, and then up, and now down, and I have no testosterone. It's not only blocked by a shot, it's also blocked now by a new drug, and it's no longer responding to that. So that little chart at the very end is the cancer growing, and there's really no way to stop it at this point. And that's all part of it, right? So this is way out of character. It looks like I'm hanging up my tool belt and I'm giving in. It's not the case, not the case. This is where the tool belt hangs in the house. And when I'm doing things, I reach for that tool belt, and I am far from done reaching for that tool belt. But the message I got from this picture is never forget who you are. Always remember who you are. I did for a while. Here I go. Do you remember that little boy with the gun? That's who I am. So I want to finish up quickly. Regrets, there were 3 of them, right? Something I didn't do, which is graduate, something I did do, which is quit Union Carbide, and something I could do nothing about, which is my brother's death. You need to let go of those if you have them. That regret about not finishing college, I needed to go back and reprocess. I didn't finish college because I couldn't. I was in such a bad place spiritually and mentally that had I tried to stay there, I have no idea what would have happened. You have to let go of that. You made the right decision at the time. Leaving Union Carbide, same thing. I think about that now. Good pension, good job, money. But at the time, I could not continue. It was a good decision at the time. I have to have self-compassion that I made the right choice in the moment. And I have to let that go. The regrets you have, there's nothing you can do about, can be the hardest. But there is nothing I could have done to help Phil. I'm gonna have to let that go too. And if you don't let go of those regrets, they will consume the resources you need to be who you're meant to be. The other big thing, and I don't want to leave without talking about this just for a moment. I know I'm running over. The cancer thing, in particular. The cat thing was part of this too. When that last treatment stopped working, I went through a pretty tough time, as one might imagine. And I went through an awful lot of grieving. One of the things I grieved was all of you. I assume few people here are going to miss me. But I'm going to miss all of you too. And I got through that pretty well. Took a couple, 3 weeks, a month. And then somebody started talking about one of the kids. And it started all over again. What I learned is that the grieving tells you what to be grateful for. There's a lot of things I don't grieve about, a lot of things that aren't important to me. But when I feel that grieving, I get this sense of gratitude. And I think we need to hold both of those things. I wouldn't want to be grieving without that sense of gratitude, and if all I had is gratitude, I'd be missing the point. Thank you for listening to the picture show. Try this with a friend. Tell them to get a box of pictures if you're old enough, and let them go through their life. We're gonna sing a hymn. We're gonna sing my favorite hymn, maybe one of the all-time favorites. And that is Let It Be a Dance We Do. How do you wanna, we are running late. Can we cut this down to 2 verses? Oh, how do we do that with you guys? Okay, okay.